So in that case, we are live now. Then this will get recorded and published. And yeah, if Rick suggests we look at the status page first.
Yeah, awesome. So should I start?
Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. So let's see. Oh, it's on air, right?
Several people requested that we record the meetings.
Yeah, it's
including you.
But I'm going to close some tabs first. I have the status report issue open here. Let me isolate that screen a bit. Let's see.
Awesome.
Yeah, seeing your screen?
No, yeah, my browser's close to freezing up, it looks. Yes, there it is. Hopefully. Almost. Okay. Seeing my screen?
Yes.
Roy, I also think it's good to give a little bit of background for those who haven't seen work on this page before.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want me to do that? I can do it, or you can do it.
Go ahead.
Right. So quite a long time ago, I think well over like 2 years, we decided that the status page, well over 6 years, excuse me, we decided that the status report wasn't very good. In the meantime, we did do some small alterations, but we never really got around to really changing the user interface. So there were kind of quite a few design iterations, and then we decided to kind of take a new look at it, a fresh look at it. And Christina has been doing quite a lot of work in the past few months, doing all kinds of iterations on the design. And I think we kind of design that has kind of the consensus of the group and we think it's a good approach, right? I think that's kind of what we arrived at.
Yes. So basically 2 months ago, we bumped the issue. Boyan provided some inspiration with some more up-to-date approaches to how a status report or a dashboard-like overview of your system could look like. And Christina took up the challenge and started with wireframes and some visual design iterations. We discussed a couple of those in an earlier session. And I think the last decision we really have to make. Yes. So, okay, two decisions maybe. One of the suggestions some of the discussion was, should we, so there's three main parts to this page, right? There's a summary of errors, warnings, and OK or checked items at the top. Then there's a section with basic information about your system. That could have, well, that's the kind of info you often have to provide if you're submitting a bug report or having issues. And what server are you running on? What PHP version are you running? Etc. What database version are you using? So that's basic info about your setup. And the third is the list reordered or rejiggered as we have it now, with all the individual items that make up the status overview. So maybe two final calls to make before we really head into development. I think it was suggested that we should look into the order of these first two boxes. So should we start with the summary of issues and then the status info, or should we have there's another one. Sorry. Or should we have status info and summary of issues found second?
I feel like you want to see the stuff that is most likely to have changed first. And so I would put the status messages on top because you know, that's where you find out, oops, a module's out of date or something like that, versus your PHP version is basically always going to be what it is unless you make a movement yourself to change that.
I definitely agree. I think a status report or a dashboard, the design principle of a dashboard is like show meaningful change, right? So, and I think that comes best when we do these items.
The only other question I have is what goes in that big empty box underneath 15 checked?
Yeah, there's a suggestion there, and it's this one.
Sorry, what does that say? Oh, run cron? Oh, that's a great idea.
I think I like it too. Yeah.
Yes, it's a suggestion, but it can be changed. I mean, it's useful, but it doesn't follow the other items design. I mean, it's completely different, but it can be useful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's one of the core things that at least I do when I come to this page. You go like, oh.
Right, and it's true for every Drupal site, I think. Then the other thing is, like, eventually I would imagine we want to apply the same styling to the update status screen, and then the button there can be check for new updates or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that makes sense. So far, so good. We see also here a version of a state of the page where everything's cool. So no errors or warning boxes are shown, and the remaining checked items are full width. I think that makes sense as well. I think the last decision is, and let's look at the mobile version here, is how we present those actual items. So we had a discussion the last time, do we want one table sorted with showing errors first, then warnings, then OK? Or do we want separate tables, separate listings for errors, for warnings, and for checked items? I think that's a final call to make.
I feel like as long as they're sorted with errors on top and then warnings and so on, you probably don't need the visual clutter of the headings because it's clear both visually with the colors and stuff, but also accessibility-wise from the different icons there that it's sort of ordered from most important to least important. But I'm not a designer, so I'm happy to be
I agree, it's cleaner, right? So at first I tended towards the left version as well. I think Bojan had a good point when he said, yes, but where do these things jump to then? Does this warning button jump to the middle of the
yes,
same list?
link to something, right. Okay, that's fine. I mean, you can do hidden, like invisible headings, but you know that gets.
Oh yeah, it would probably be solvable technically to link to a specific position in that list. It's
Correct.
just if that's nice.
Yeah. Why don't we do the more straightforward one then with the actual headings, and then we can always touch it up. later.
Yes, I would propose the same. I mean, if there's no errors, then that table would not be rendered, right? So this is the worst case where you have where all three categories have some, which is well, not worst, but it's pretty usual. I guess.
Did not have the nice pink and yellow backgrounds though on the second version because that looks nice to me.
Yeah, I think what Christina did here is use the color for the heading.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit unstandard compared to what we do elsewhere. So I'd probably keep the headings boring and then make the table covers really pretty, personally. But again, not a designer, so I'm happy.
Yeah, but you're right because I mean it's not necessary. I mean it can be useful, but it's not necessary to understand it if we don't need it.
Problem we get into when we use colors to differentiate things and no other visual thing is that people who are colorblind won't be able to tell the difference between those anyway. Or I don't know about
these
like
are words, right?
yes. So it's kind of an optional thing, but I'm just saying like.
So do we think then just the background? Do we want to add the background color to the rows in the right side?
I would add the icon on the left side, but not sure. I think it would be enough. I don't know. A suggestion.
Could you repeat the question, Roy?
Well, in the left side we have a light red background for each row. Do we want to apply that to this version as well, or is that I can
maybe it's too repetitive. I mean, too red, too warning, too I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not necessary. On the other side, maybe on the left option, maybe you need it to reinforce the concept because you don't have the title.
Right. In the left version, you really need it. On the right side, maybe not.
Okay.
I think if we start with this right side, this structure of the page, we can fine tune those specifics if needed. But I think this is a good starting point. Our starting position is have the headings just use the regular text color. So these errors found and ones found probably don't have to be colored.
Okay.
We take it from there.
Yeah. Because I mean, this is also one of these pages where let's get kind of these changes in first, because I think this makes it already a lot better. And then like very small tweaks like that we can even do in follow-ups. We don't have to do it like straight away. So let's get this thing in.
And we're jumping 10 years ahead. Look.
No, it looks so pretty. It's so
it looks really nice. And not only pretty, I think it's functionally very sound as well.
Hey, one quick thing though, can I just comment on something? So you said those 2 errors, 2 warnings are links supposed to jump you somewhere, but they don't look like that. And also the things down below that say Drupal version last cron run, those are not links, I believe. And so it'd be great if somehow those were styled differently.
Actually, there was a first version with an icon pointing below, like it's an icon, and finally I thought it was more clear just adding their details. If you go down, well, adding just the literal details there just to show that there are more details. I mean.
Yeah, I think if we color them blue using just a Drupal
okay,
affordance of this
Yeah.
is clickable, I think we've already solved it.
Yeah, or put a C detail, like make details a link.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all you need to do.
Yeah.
Like, because you see how the other ones have links for more information, so we just need the,
Yeah.
you know, linky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I think another thing that we should decide is we add errors in the general information block. Here.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
another
that's great.
addition.
Yep.
Then we could even put out a warning that's like, you're on PHP 4, you should die, or something.
This page shouldn't even be displayed.
You see this, yeah.
Let's do that. And we probably hit some interesting cases where we design doesn't explicitly say how it should look when the PHP version is not correct.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should
can figure it
that
out.
off in general to like a sub-issue, because I could
Yes,
see us
yes,
wanting
yes.
to do, like,
No, I mean, there's
that
like
requires
32
logic, like
and
at what point is last run a warning versus an error, you know, like that kind of thing, so that might be better as a follow-up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Christina, with these final decisions,
Yeah.
I think it would be good to have a final mock-up and say
Yeah.
this is our spec.
Okay. Perfect.
So that we have a one design that we're really aiming for and that we're working towards.
Okay.
And so that we can say no to lots of the suggestions, and okay, we'll look into it and follow up these issues for the valid concerns.
Okay. We'll upload it.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Good job. Excellent.
Anyway, so those are all nitpicks. This is really fantastic work, and I'm so excited to see this go in. So, I was asking in Slack, would you be able to post a link to the issue so I can subscribe to it?
Sorry. Oh, the link. Yeah. You aren't. There it is. Prabhu.
Yeah. You know what else is funny is this is a 5-digit node ID, so that means that this will. Oh no, this is 6 digits. Never mind. But still, 2009. This issue is in open sense.
Yes.
So well done on killing this issue before it reaches a decade old. That's awesome.
So yeah, Prabhu is on the call as well, I think.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and me and Sumit here in the issue are colleagues, and I think they already started with a patch that changes, I think, only the HTML output, because I looked at it earlier today with Simply Test, and this was the output,
Oh dear.
which suggests that there's already a general system information summary, etc. So yes, they've created the HTML output and are looking for confirmation before adding the styling. So maybe Gabor or Balan or Webchick, what can we tell Prabhu and Sumit how to approach this? Because this is hard to review, right? If it's correct or not.
Has this been assigned to anybody yet, or is this still really preliminary to build out?
Who goes? Well, I think Sumit and Prabhu are expressing their intent to work on this. If they want to move this forward, they can. We're not assigning, right? People are assigning to themselves. So.
Okay.
So I don't immediately understand why we moved from a table to divs, because it seems like this is tabular data, so table is the correct semantic thing to use here. But in addition to not being a designer, I'm also not an HTML person, so I'm happy to be told I'm wrong on that as well.
Probably
Yeah,
more on the mobile, like once you get into responsive tables are a little bit more difficult.
Ah, that's a good reason. Yep. So probably what happened, Roy, is that this probably either changes or something. I mean, so it changed a bunch of div stuff, but it didn't include any CSS, at least in the patch. So probably what's missing is the ability to style this to look like a table. Because right now it's just spans and divs and stuff like that. So, I mean, things like requirements zero title and stuff are not awesome. It'd be awesome if like the actual readable name was in there, like requirements Drupal, just because that would make the template much more scannable and editable by people. I don't know if that's possible though. Like I don't know if some of the and the other thing is like a lot of these, like this whole thing, if this is all it is, could be written as just like a for each loop, right? Like for each requirements, print the requirement title and value.
Are you looking?
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the patch. I'm not sure if I'm missing something here. But what I see is a lot of copy and pasted code, and usually that's a great example of when you could use a loop to do things like on a for each element of the array type of deal.
Yeah, I'd like to come in here. So the for each, the reason why we've like done a copy paste job is that actually the elements are all over the array. So like some elements, so the way the structure of the page is, it's like array element 4 is displayed first, then 6, then 20, then 16, then 18. So there's no order. The HTML structure is not consistent with the order of the array.
What I would recommend then in that case, especially if you're going to be printing out raw values like this, would be before it gets to the template, like in the pre-process, whatever, maybe looping, like creating the array you want there. So calling it something other than requirements, but you know what I mean, like call it, data or something, and then name the array keys something human readable. So then you can print Drupal, and you can print PHP, you can print database, and so on. And then the errors, warnings, etc., those can just be for each loops through anything in the errors part of the array. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying that, okay, yeah, it's making sense, yes.
Yeah, because I just feel like if I were a themer looking at this, I would have no idea what, requirements 19 was. But if it was called requirements database, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, that's the database information. I actually want to put that somewhere else,
Also, it's probably by luck that 19 was the database on your system, and probably other systems.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. It may be complete luck.
That's may or may not be 19. So, yeah.
Because if another contrib module puts something in number 18, it could be different entirely. So yeah, that's a good point, Gabor. So, yeah, I think in general, for these places where we want to print specific rows, we should create dedicated variables for those so we know exactly what's going in there. And that would happen not in the template. That would happen like a level above the template, and like what is this template called? So probably in geez, I don't know. Yeah, probably template preprocess status report or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
who's posting these notes back to the issue?
Yeah, I can post that to the issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Do we want to move on to dev days?
Exactly. Do we need the Hangout for that?
I've managed to get online, I think.
Hey! There you are.
Just different names once again.
Yes.
Yeah, shall I just give you some numbers first? Because I've just counted and we worked on nearly 50 UX issues, out of which 9 are fixed and 4 are RTBC, and the rest is either needing review or need work. So I think there's lots of stuff that we actually did work on, from very small things like there were 2 buttons that just said save change instead of save, and just making a bit more consistency that way.
Yeah.
There wasn't a dedicated usability table simply because the
Sorry,
setup of the space.
have I stopped screen sharing yet? Or I'm not sure.
I don't have any screen to share, so.
Can somebody who did look at my screen confirm that I'm...
No, you're not screen sharing anymore.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
So there weren't kind of dedicated tables for different issues, but we had lots of people actually coming with questions about usability, and I did a session on Thursday where actually every single usability issue for site builders I came across, every screenshot had an issue number. And I think half of them got taken up in the next day. So I think that's actually quite an interesting approach, getting people to actually work on the things they've heard about. So one fun fact is that we did actually work on an issue with a 4-digit number. That is 12 years and 9 months old. About if you don't have cookies, you can't log in, but you also don't get a message. So,
nice. That's a horrible issue.
It was now hanging on a big pipe test that wouldn't run or so. But yes, it was a very mixed bag, and I think that was also quite nice because there were quite a lot of also novice issues in there, but also issues that people had been bugging people for a long time. So we did that, and Rachel and me sat down and actually tried to look at. Try to find out what is configuration and structure, which turned into a 3-day session of coming up with a proposal for restructuring the admin interface into site building and site administration. But we did post a long issue for that, but I think it makes sense for WebCheck to further look on that before we actually discuss it in a larger. We did discuss it with lots of people during the dev days, but of course that's a very targeted group. I think that's all I have on my list for saying for now. Any questions?
So I think the main question is, where did you document the IA rework?
Yeah, I didn't post that in the channel. Well, yeah. We did document the main ideas behind it, but we didn't actually post the whole where could which page go, or which pages might need splitting up in into different pages. We did discuss it with XGEM, Casey, Alex Pott, Daniel, Bojan during the meeting, but of course there were lots of different individual ideas. So we're happy to continue thinking about that.
Yeah, I think my main piece of feedback was, although that's awesome to do that kind of feedback generation and this kind of thing, I'm really worried that Dev Days is really not reflective of our target at all. It's like pretty much the cream of the crop expert Drupal developers from Europe. and usually you want to organize your IA around the exact opposite of them, which is like new users who don't know anything and are trying to figure Drupal out.
Yeah, so that's why the main point behind that is to say, how can we split this up so that people either, like that we don't have to overwhelm people that work on an existing site, because now if you're a site editor and you want to change the description of a taxonomy term, you need to have permissions to access structure, to find the list of taxonomy terms somewhere where it's also bundled up with actually adding fields and so. So that's that was the main reasoning behind it. I'm trying to find a way to make it actually easier to deal with existing sites, but also have clearer where pages should actually go, so that people have a better idea where to look for the page of a module. So actually not the developers who know which modules they have installed.
So I'm also wondering, because the original issue which this kind of discussion sparked was, I think, about solving some of the problems that we have with, like for example, menu, where you have configuration and the actual items on the same page.
Yeah.
mixing up kind of content with configuration.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there like a first step we can make to fix that?
Yeah. One step would be to actually move all the pages that have content on them out of the structure and configuration pages and just add links in the operations.
Right. Because like that seems to be the first kind of step of this larger kind of initiative that you want to do. I think that's a very kind of worthwhile discussion to have. So maybe it's an idea to kind of start with that one.
Yeah.
So that we can get kind of clear, well, consensus and possibly validation of that approach. Because I think that's the fundamental principle underpinning many of the other subsequent developments that you're then suggesting.
Yeah, the other thing which we really would like to develop if we're going down that road is to actually have clearer roles that module developers can actually find out where they should place their things. So we don't want to make a list to say this page should go here or there. We would really like to make a kind of checklist of 5 questions that gives you the answer where this page should live. That would be because sorting out core is one thing, but as a site builder, the confusion quite often comes the moment you also have contrib modules installed. And things are suddenly in different places than you would have expected them, which is why under Drupal 7 we have user configuration in 4 different places, I think. So, but yes, starting with this content thing, that's a good idea.
Okay, that would be a good next comment on that issue, I think. So that we chunk the work, right?
I can do that. I'll do that.
Okay,
Thanks.
I really like that idea of, you know, because that moves us towards something like a, you know, a kind of a principles approach, you know, rather than a tactical approach of, you know, let's change this thing here and that thing there. And I think, you know, we've tried to move towards that in the past. I know Roy and Bojan have worked particularly in the 7 theme on trying to take a more of a principles first approach. I'd love to see more people think that way. You know, I'm glad that you're moving in that direction. It's like, what is the principle that determines where this kind of a thing lives in the UI? And if we can follow that, then that internal logic can be a logic that the user also understands.
So, if we can have if we have a admin interface that has that kind of principle underlying, it might also help us to actually get newer users to understand how Drupal works. That there is stuff that is structurally built, and that there's other stuff that is content. So hopefully we could actually also kind of engage or educate new users that way.
Yeah, I mean the outcome we're aiming for, I guess, is that there's a more internal consistency, and so that the system becomes a bit more predictable, right? So that people move with more confidence through the system.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I think we complain a lot, you know, in UX about, well, these contributed module developers start putting things all over the place and items, menu link items in all kinds of odd places. But we haven't really given them any kind of guidelines on where to put things. So, you know, it's more incumbent on us to kind of start doing that, to say, hey, this tray here or this menu or this place is for these kinds of things, you know.
Yeah, I think one other starting point was also the issue about trying to emphasize more relevant modules on the configuration page, and the other issues that that want to move the permissions and rules away from the list of users. So there's quite a few issues that kind of are all in this area, and that lots of them getting tackled at the moment rather individually.
Yes, it was great to see all those issues getting attention last week. Oh yeah, Anja, thanks so much for spearheading this.
But that goes to Rachel and me.
No, but really, that's. I mean, you're carving out a specific niche, basically, right? You're starting with the text, and of course, the problem we all have is that it hits everything if you don't watch out. But I think you're taking a good approach with the principal road. Yeah, I'm excited to see it moving forward. So, how did your session go? Because that was also a bit of your topic, right? How can we find more rules or principles for people?
Yeah, it was a session about pain points for site builders and what module developers can actually do about them already now without big restructuring. I can post the link to the slides. I don't know when the video is going to be up. And I think the session went well enough. I mean, the air in there was so bad that I think everybody was kind of having problems breathing. But no, there's quite a few small things that that module developers can do, like not calling their pages simply settings, or not having a module that doesn't have a link actually. So yeah, I got lots of positive feedback on that, and the fact that actually some of the issues got taken up and RTBC'd, I think is seems to be a point that I might have raised some interesting issues. Yes. So I'm thinking about submitting the same session for DrupalCon as well, except for I have to find some new issues then, because some of them got solved.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, David is not here, right? We did testing on Kevin's prototypes. No, he's probably here tomorrow.
Yeah, he was at a meetup until 9, and then he's going home now, so he's going to be unable to make it this time, unfortunately.
Okay.
Will he be on the meeting 12 hours from now or whatever?
Yeah, but then a lot of us will not.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can postpone that till then. I had something, if there's nobody else who has an agenda item, which is on workbench stuff.
Yeah, that's another one, right?
Yeah, so maybe I'll share my screen for a sec.
Yep.
Okay. First, is there other stuff that people want to talk about, though? Because I don't want to, like, own the meeting.
No, not for me.
Okay. So then we have... The computer is super slow. What can I close to make that faster? Okay.
Because Workflow Initiative got some attention last week, right, as well, right, on DevDays?
Yeah, there was apparently, like, a lot of momentum on this at DevDays, which I wasn't at DevDays, so I was not privy to all this, but when Boyan talked to me yesterday, it was like, oh, crap, there's all this stuff happening. So, for those who are not familiar, we have one of the big strategic initiatives that Drupal 3 has proposed for Drupal 8 is the Workflow Initiative. There's this issue, which I'll post into Slack, which is sort of the main tracking issue that, like, I don't know, 60 people or something are subscribed to. And this is where they're developing their overall plan, kind of must-have, should-have, could-have stuff. They're you know, kind of laying out different phases and dependencies of different things and that sort of stuff. So they've been working a lot on this. They've started on Phase C, which is the content moderation module with MVP user interface. So that leads over to this plan issue. And the content moderation module, so this is what they're essentially doing is taking the Workbench moderation, the Drupal 8 version of that, which has a 1.0 release, and they're proposing it for core as a stable release. And so Boyan and I sat on the phone for, I don't know, like 2 hours yesterday, and I took every screenshot. So if you want to read more about how the module works, you can read this enormous comment. And essentially, the functionality works really great. It works excellent. It does exactly what you'd expect. There's a couple of things that I thought needed fixing. So for example, you can move something into like draft mode or request review mode, but there's no way to get a listing of content that requires review. And I tried to make one in views, and hilarity ensued and such. So, so they need to fix that. So there's some way of listing the content, whether it's expanding the admin content page or whether it's you know, a separate moderation view or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, just so long as there is a link somewhere that can list this content. Because making this view is actually annoying, and then you have to like hand type the machine name of a moderation state in here. So it's just like it's kind of a train wreck UX-wise. So, and then the other thing that came up is when you're going through the admin panel. So it basically defines two different things. It defines moderation states, and it defines moderation state transitions. So moderation states is pretty straightforward. That's like your typical Drupal admin page. It's got names, machine names, and then you can edit and delete them. However, transitions is like this humongous gargantuan page, which has a number of problems on it that at least Brian and I define, and I'll let that spin for a little while. Compared to the Drupal 7 version, which is really straightforward and just has like 4 rows in it and done. That's it. And the other thing it does is it completely bloats up the permissions page. So this, I had to reduce my font size by 2 in order to even take this screenshot because it was like, what? You know, and then there's various problems with that too. So the outcome of Boyan and my discussion is like, okay, well the easy thing to do then is let's just remove some of the transitions. And that way, we don't have to deal with the scalability problem. So why don't we just make it exactly what we have in Drupal 7, which is just a needs review and a draft state, and that's it, and not all these archived and published and stuff. That isn't going to work because they made those workflow states for a reason. I don't really remember what the reason is, but basically they're not going back to the way they used to do it. So then I was like, okay, well, why don't we keep published, archived, and draft and remove needs review? That would at least get it down to only 6 different things, but they, you know, don't want to do that because, you know, in their actual implementation of this module in the real world, you know, it's coming up over and over again that like they need needs review. That's a very common thing, and it would make sense for core to ship with it. So I spun off this issue. Where did it go? This one, to figure out how we might be able to deal with the scalability challenges that are presented with this UI. So cutting down on the permissions nonsense and cutting down on the transition admin page itself. And I have some suggestions in the issue, but I thought maybe we want to talk as a group before I unveil that. First of all, does the problem
can you explain state transitions as a thing?
So a state transition, that would be moving from draft to needs review, from needs review to draft, from draft to published, from published to archived. Basically, for every state you introduce, you need to define a transition from all of the other states to that state, or from that state to all the other states. So the more states you add is the compounding horrible matrix of death that happens because, like, you're just going to keep getting more and more and more of these permissions, more and more rows in this table, and so on.
Yeah, but that's tempered to a certain degree by like use case. Like there've been a number of suggestions even in that issue of, oh well, we could ship core without, say, archive to needs review because, you know, oh, if they have to go from archive directly to draft if they want to reopen this piece of content, then that's not really a big deal, and they could always add the transition later. So exactly. I mean, like there's some nuance to that, and what you're really defining on beyond just the transition is like what no one's saying is and who can do it, which is why there's a corresponding permission for all of these things, because as a content author, I might be able to say, hey, I'm done writing this thing, now it needs review. But I certainly can't just go publish it if I'm only a content author.
Yeah. So I don't think anyone takes issue with the functionality. I think the problem is the UI bloat that happens with the functionality and finding ways that we can stem that. So that's one option. The other option, which we will probably do because I don't think we're going to reach any epiphany moments on this call in 10 minutes, but we will probably just remove some of the defaults so that it's a much more manageable setting here by default. I guess if no one's going to shout out some ideas, here are some ideas that Boyan and I had when we were critiquing the screen. So one problem this screen has is like this table row says create new draft, request review, publish, keep in review, publish again. So like the order seems to be completely nonsensical. The order actually does make sense if you go over to the right here. You know, it's like all the draft states, then all the need review states, then the published states, etc. but you have to go jump over 2 table rows to even figure out what that is. The second thing is machine names for workflow transitions probably do not make sense to be a right-in-your-face exposed thing. So if we got rid of that column, that would help a little bit. And then the third thing was when we go from state to state, Drupal 7 had this kind of dummy column with just a little arrow pointing that way. And even though that's a really cheesy workaround, that's actually really helpful for explaining what is happening here. That this is what's happening. This is the name of the transition. We're going to go from draft to published, and needs review to needs review, that kind of thing. Another idea Boyan had was maybe visually separating these two, so we only do draft 2 different states, you know, and then do the from backwards in a separate table or down below or something like that. And then Kevin actually said, do we need human readable names for these things at all? Because if we don't, we can eliminate this entire screen and then only deal with the permissions page. And then on the permissions page, sorry?
If you don't have, like, aren't those readable things right there actually getting dropped into your like status?
Here in the buttons. Yep.
Yeah.
But there might be a way to programmatically create these labels that doesn't involve a human being writing them. I don't know.
Well, what I was suggesting actually, Angie, is very much related to the other issue that I posted about creating the about changing it to a tab bar or a button bar instead of a instead of putting those things into the dropdown. The fact, so investigating this a little bit further, I saw that you know, what Krell wrote about you know, the decision process behind making these things you know, explicit transitions rather than just going from state to state. And I think that therein lies the key problem. It's that, you know, as soon as we make them into transitions, then that's when they multiply out of control. Change, right? I can just click on the different state, and now I changed it to that state. There may be a transition happening behind the scenes when I do that, when I make that change, but it doesn't need to be exposed to the user in the form of an explicit statement of save and send back to draft. All I need to do is click the draft button and then click save, and I'm done. And the problem with the
button for every single one of those?
Yeah, so
it means you have a button for every state, not for every transition, right? So
if we did this, like, there's some stuff in this issue towards the bottom here. Let me find it. So this issue is trying to deal with that that general usability problem of the button not really scaling. So for this issue, where the hell is that? Sorry, something like this, where like right now it would just be published and not published, but in the end we could put published, not published, needs review, draft, whatever, and you'd only see the options that you have permissions to do. But then the button itself would just be saved. That would definitely be one way to address the scalability issue on the buttons, and then I don't think you need the transition human readable name at that point, because there would be nowhere it would be used. Then you don't need this page at all, and then the only thing you got to worry about is the permissions page. And the permissions are funny because like several of them have exactly the same name, like use the publish transition, use the publish transition, and it would be better if like the actual descriptions are great. They're like move content from needs review to needs whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's like, oh, I know.
The permission. Yeah.
So a simple thing we could do here is just get rid of the useless name and make this, maybe shorten it up by a couple of letters or whatever, but make more or less the description the title and then remove the descriptions. And then we've already cut down this size by like half.
So what I really worry about on this, Angie, and have worried about for a very long time, is that like states and transitions are kind of independent. Like we could have as many different states and transitions as we wanted, and unless you're on a particular like bundle that's making use of those states, because there's like, isn't there a way to actually say like these transitions apply to this thing?
Yes.
So I mean, this list could grow way out of control if I had like say completely different workflow processes for 2 or 3 different bundles.
Right. I was kind of imagining in my head that permissions would maybe set in context of defining the transition.
But even there, you're setting the workflow states. You're not setting the transitions here. The only place you're controlling what transitions are used is in the permission screen. You say you can basically remove permissions for anyone to go from state A to state B, and then that effectively removes that transition. But when you are assigning the, like I'm in the article content type settings here, and I'm saying I want you to enable moderation states, here again, I'm just selecting the states. I don't select the individual transitions people can move back and forward from. The states you can move back and forward from, that's a global setting that's controlled by permissions.
Right, but the amount, like the number of states that I have, might not be the same from one bundle to the next. So I could have completely different groups of states that are intended to be used in totally different workflows. I guess.
Fine, but I don't think the current UI allows for that either, right? You're just going to get all of them in one huge clump.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. What I think you're suggesting, Chris, is that there needs to be a UI for a workflow, right? What you really want isn't shown here at all. You know, the kind of UI that we want is a UI in which I say, okay, here's workflow A. Workflow A is that it starts with draft, and it goes to needs review, and then it goes to whatever, and then it goes to archived for this bundle. Okay, and then workflow B for a different bundle is something else, right? Or workflow C maybe here's the workflow for this kind of user, right? With all the bundles.
Oh,
So
let's add it to Field UI.
I agree.
Let's add it to Field UI.
So I agree with that in general, Kevin, but I mean that would be a pretty big rewrite of a lot of things going on here. Where I was actually trying to go with this.
That's great.
Because all it is a UI that takes the functionality that already exists and rearranges it in a different way.
Well, where I was really trying to go with this was to suggest that generating permissions for this stuff in my opinion, is probably a bad idea, and I think we would be much better off if in the transitions UI we defined which roles could actually make use of the transitions instead of creating permissions and then associating that stuff later.
Nice.
Yeah, I kind of think that's a more natural place for it too. I think the reason they went this way is kind of the same. Like we used to configure filter permissions in a separate place. Right, like that used to be under input formats, blah blah blah, whatever. But it's really difficult to audit your site and figure out where everything is at. So my sort of idea there is we could duplicate them in both positions, but I don't think you want to remove them from the permissions page because they are about giving people access to do things.
Okay, people. This is the issue to focus on, right? If we want Workbench UI.
Well,
stuff to
no.
move forward?
So Workbench UI is totally going to go into core either way, but if we're able to focus on this issue and whatever we come up with as a spec is fairly straightforward and not hard to implement, then it's possible that, and again, I kind of, whatever I said verbally on the call here is basically what I wrote out here. If you guys think that's a good idea, sweet. If you don't, that's fine too. But if we could come to consensus of a minimally viable solution here quickly meaning within say the next week.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
Then I think that we could solve. We don't have to change any of the default options. We just fix the UI and done. And they have been very responsive, like in the actual implementation issue, which is linked up here. But anyway, in the actual implementation issue, Boyan left a comment at 9 o'clock this morning saying. You know, what you ought to do is move that page from structure to config, and it was done in the next patch. So, they're very willing to incorporate UX feedback, and they really don't want to reduce the list of options because the list of options they have, they arrived at based on, 5 years of experience building this thing, right? So if we could find a way, if we could all kind of hustle on this and find a way to forward for them, I think they would implement it quickly. And then we could eliminate one of the pre-commit blockers for this thing. Otherwise, the easiest thing to do is going to be cutting out some options, but that is vastly preferable for what they're going to do coming out of Dev Days, which was remove the UI entirely and just put this stupid UI API in. I'm like, no! That's why we don't want to make it like a whole shit show, right? Like we want it to be relatively, I shouldn't say shit show on a live TV anyway. But we don't want to.
Say it again, Angie. Say it again.
Yeah, we don't want to put them through all kinds of hoops, but at the same time, if we can come up with a minimally viable product for that admin hold problem, then I think they would jump all over it, basically, if that makes sense.
Yes. So this is slated for 8.2.
The goal is definitely for this to land for 8.2, and they have a patch here. It's 700,000K, I don't know, 300K. It's already passed Alex Potts' framework manager review. It hasn't had a release manager chime in yet, but it's solid. Like, it works really well. And there's the only two things I found from a product management point of view were pretty simple. Alex Potts signed off on it, so this is close to getting in. So if we can do some stuff with the UI before it gets committed, great. If not, it's fine. We'll continue to work on it, over the next few weeks, and then it'll just be a post-commit improvement. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. But anyway, this is really exciting because this is using our same sort of iterative design process that we talked about at DrupalCon to actually put in a feature that people really care about. So it's very exciting. There's stuff happening with this right now. So.
Good idea to leave the UI in.
Yeah, no, don't take UIs out. They're wonderful. Anyway, I just need to plaster people over the face with that image, that pyramid image that you had in DrupalCon. I'm just going to on showing people that all the time. So.
All right. Nice one, folks. We're an hour in. I think, thank you all for attending. I think we've identified the issues that would like your immediate or near immediate attention, and of course everybody's free to bring up other ideas and work on other stuff as well, and we can discuss those next week or even tomorrow in that time zone.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.